Where did your love of basketball come from? When did you get into the game? What drew you to the great sport of basketball? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys too. I guess for me, it all started in the backyard. Down in Bell Block, where I'm from, we lived out in the country and had a pretty big yard, and we had a gravel driveway that went right around the house, and on the garage was a basketball hoop. And I'm the youngest of three boys, and so my two older brothers and I would be out there every day after school. Oh, we weren't just out playing basketball; we were doing all sports, to be honest. But fell in love with basketball, and it was real backyard basketball because it was you can imagine being the youngest. I never was allowed to win. If I was winning, it usually ended in a scrap or pushed into the garage wall as you're going for a layup or something, and I ended up going inside crying. But no, I truly believe that's where the passion started, and if anyone who's seen me play, that's probably where the physicality comes from as well, I would say.
Were they any good, your brothers?
They were good, both very good in their own right. My oldest brother, Greg, played in the New Zealand NBL for a couple of years, and my middle brother, who was a good high school player but ended up becoming a chef, so the hours didn't correlate with basketball. So he kind of, I guess, stopped playing after high school. But yeah, both were, funnily enough, both were shooters. And I always joke saying I became good at rebounding and setting screens because my brothers are the ones I always wanted to shoot the ball. But yeah, they just love the game, like I do, still do. They love watching when I was playing, and still follow it.
We turn on the television sets now that there's basketball everywhere, but I think you probably grew up in an era where basketball was slowly being introduced to the TV sets, and that era is Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls. How much of an influence did that have on you?
Oh, huge. Come fly with me. I remember Dad somehow had some connections in America to get NBA games and VHS tapes that were NTSC, not the PAL that we needed for your general player here. So Dad ended up getting a video recorder or video player that could play these NTSC tapes, or you could switch it over back in the day, which is crazy that we're even having this conversation in today's day and age. But come fly with me, we started watching that, and we were just amazed by Michael Jordan and what he could do. So we would watch it and we'd go outside and try and practice the moves that he was doing. So Jordan had a huge impact on my career personally, for sure.
He was the main guy that
he was
you
the guy.
looked up to?
There was no one else.
Yep.
There was Michael Jordan, and that was it. It was everyone wanted to be like Mike.
Is he still the guy?
There's always a touchy one, especially with my son. We often have this debate. I believe so. Yes, I believe he is. It's hard to say LeBron is not up there for sure, because what LeBron and the longevity of LeBron's career is insane. To be able to do what he's doing at 40 plus years old now is insane. But yeah, Jordan will always be the GOAT for me.
That's definitely the right answer on this show. Don't you worry about that. We are very much in the Michael Jordan camp. Before basketball, though, before you really, really got into basketball, BMX. You're a BMXer, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so
Carlos Spencer even in a couple of races?
Yeah, we did. We raced against each other a couple of times.
Classic.
And it was right into BMX. It was a family thing. So again, Mum, Dad packed the bikes on the back of the car, put the bacon and egg pie in a Tupperware container and some sausage rolls, and off you go for the weekend. Myself and my two brothers rode BMX I think I started riding at 5 years old, and I rode till I was about 12 or 13. So, and had some decent success in BMXing, and we used to love it. It was, again, just a family thing to do. We'd all truck away for the weekends and went all over New Zealand riding bikes. So it was a bit of fun.
I can imagine you're one of the taller blokes back at school, as was I when I was at school also. There's always a bit of pressure on the first 15 coach on the taller fellas. So did that fall your way as well?
100%. I kind of had a late growth, so I was kind of above average, I'd say, through primary school and intermediate, and when I got to high school, kind of probably about sixth form, I think I had a little bit of a growth spurt. But 100%, you always got looked upon as, when you're walking across the school, why does that guy not play rugby? And I did play rugby from till probably about fourth form, and then I just realised that I wanted to play basketball. And to be honest, I grew up in New Plymouth, and moving to South Auckland from New Plymouth, the tackling was a little bit harder. Guys were a little bit bigger, and I realised my flying tackles weren't having as much effect in South Auckland as they were back in Bell Block. So I fell in love with basketball, and but I would often get shoulder tapped, and I played a few games, got called in for a few games to play for the first 15 and stuff, but My heart was always in basketball for sure.
What position were you?
I kind of, funnily, growing up, I was a number 8. But because I'd originally grown up playing football, I can kick with both feet, so I was also the kicker, so I could kick from both sides of the field, and I was number 8. But when I got to high school and grew, I became a lock. Yeah. So number 8 flanker was my position when I was younger.
And so then, when did basketball genuinely become? When did you get it in your head that you thought, I could make basketball a life?
Probably not till 7th form or year 13. I realised that I'm actually all right at it. And I saw others playing, and I was like, I could actually play for Auckland. And that year, the end of that year, I got noticed by Tab Baldwin, who we were speaking about earlier. And Tab had seen me. Someone had put my name forward. He had seen me playing in a 3x3 comp at Victoria Park. And then, as if, there was no YouTube or anything in those days. And so then I went along to a New Zealand trial, and he was the coach of the New Zealand team at the time. And I hadn't been invited to the trial, but my coach, high school coach, had said, "Can he come along?" And he was like, "Yeah, I suppose so." So ended up making the New Zealand team, making the Auckland team all in the same year, and the rest is history.
We're blessed with lots of amazing coaches across all our sports in New Zealand, and some of them at the top of the world in their chosen field. Now, I've always understood that Tab Baldwin is one of those guys. Mm-hmm. So what made him to be a really good coach?
He was ahead of his time, and certainly those successes of the Tall Blacks, both Nenad Vucinic and himself were ahead of their time, I think, in the coaching space. He was a great motivator. Like, he was the sort of coach that you'd run through a brick wall for him. And so he found a way to push your buttons that made you want to play hard and made you want to play for him. But he wasn't easy. He was a tough coach. And I'm sure if you interviewed every player that had played under him, more would probably say they don't like him than like him because he was too hard. For some people he was too hard, but I thrived on that. I thrived on someone pushing me and wanting me to be better. And I can remember my first year for Auckland, he said to me, "You'll lead the league in steals one day." And it was like the next year I did, and he just saw something in me that others hadn't. And he believed in me and believed that I could be a good player and pushed me to be the best I could be. And, for me, I was lucky that, that he ended up becoming the Tall Black coach. I couldn't make the Tall Blacks before he was the coach. And so sometimes it's just those changing door moments that create your career. And, he'd had me at Auckland for many years before he got the Tall Blacks, so he knew exactly what I could do, and we'd won multiple championships in New Zealand. But he's probably, if I was to sum him up, he's great in the X's and O's, but he's probably a better motivator, if you've ever heard him speak.
Yeah, I have, actually, and he has an aura about him, without question. So at that time, the Auckland Stars, I love that name. This is pre-Breakers and us having a franchise in the Australian competition. Correct. So I go back in time now. Peter Pokai, loves Peter Pokai.
Brilliant player.
So the domestic competition there, it was bloody fantastic. Mm-hmm. It was tough. It was on tally. Can you sort of take us a dive into that world? Because you would have been a young fella then, and I'm sure back in those times it was, back of the boys bus, back there, and a tough environment to head into.
Absolutely.
What was that like playing at those years?
Yeah, it was, for me, I'd come from small high school. I went to Papatoetoe High School, and we didn't play in the Premier Comp in Auckland. I actually think we played in the third comp in Auckland. So you can imagine I'm going from that to the National League where, my mum had been the coach or my brother had been the coach, or, we didn't have many super high level coaches at the school. So I didn't even know going into the Auckland team that I had a high basketball IQ. I remember Tab saying, "Man, your IQ is really high in basketball." And I wasn't super book smart, so I was kind of first time anyone had ever said I've got a high IQ. But I didn't know what that meant. And it wasn't until later I worked out, that I could see things on a basketball court that others couldn't. And my vision and my reading plays was above average. And so going into that environment, it was just kind of, it's nerve-wracking. I had Ricky Strother was on my team, and he was like my idol. I remember looking up to him when I was a youngster and mopping floors and watching him play and going, "Man, I'd love to be like him." And then next minute he's my teammate, and it's like, The one saving grace was our Auckland team at the time was almost like an under-23 team. We had a couple of older guys, but the majority of the team was young, so there was a lot in the same boat as me. and Tab had pretty much just gone and got the best talent from around New Zealand at a young age and said, come and play for me. And everyone wanted to play for him because of his reputation. And so we ended up having a really strong squad that was all young. So we all kind of went through it together. So it wasn't so bad. But yeah, those daunting moments of, being around the senior guys and not wanting to let them down. And we had Tall Blacks on our team that were like long-term Tall Blacks that would get on you, man. If you made a mistake, it was like, what are you doing, Dylan? Set the screen there or roll there or get out of the way. And you're a young guy. You're trying to process all of this as well as trying to show the coach that you're capable. But, I sat on the bench for a long time in those Auckland Stars years, waiting my time and just showing, glimpses at training to show the coach that I was worthy of getting another contract. But when you finally get those minutes on the court, you just want to make the most of them. And so I was just hungry. I'd just sit there waiting for that, Tab to look down and call me on. And, I was probably had the fastest time between getting off the bench and getting to the sub bench with my tracksuit off and ready to go than anybody. So I was just hungry, ready to go. And, if I was giving any advice to youngsters these days, it's just be ready, man. Like just whenever your number's called, and it might be for 30 seconds at the end of the game, just use that 30 seconds. And in my first season, I think it was, the last game of the season, we were blowing out, I think it was Hutt Valley or someone like that, and I came on and had 17 points, I think, in one quarter or something, and and that was for before you re-sign for the next year. That's the first thing in the coach's mind, right? It's like, oh, well, this guy did that. So, those moments are just that can make or break your career.
That competition back then, I mean, it's a good competition now, but back then it was kind of countrywide. Enormous. I remember going to Saints games. I used to live in Wellington, so we'd go to Saints games, and the crowd was always packed. Nationally, it was huge. How much did that help set you up for the rest of your career? Because you made your debut for the Breakers. We'll get to that shortly, but you made your debut for the Breakers when you were 27. But you're obviously playing some pretty high caliber basketball before that time.
Yeah, and high pressure. Like we were good. Our Auckland Stars team was very good. Yeah. We won multiple championships, and we had Pero Cameron on our team, who was arguably the best player, and he was still young. He was only a year older than me. So we had a young group that were really talented, and we had some early success. So with that comes a target and comes, the expectation of the coaches that you have success every year. So we learnt to, play in big moments and big games and not be daunted by it. And again, those moments, until you're in them, you can't experience them. You can watch it all you want on video, but until you're in that moment, I mean, you know what it's like when the lights are on and everyone's watching, and you've got to make that winning shot or whatever it may be. Until you're in that moment, you don't know how to experience it. And sometimes if you have success in that first time you experience it, that can push you forward. But if you fail in that first time, that's going to play in the back of your mind the next time you get that same opportunity. And sometimes you only get one opportunity to hit a game-winning shot or a game-winning free throw, whatever it may be.
Were you a nervous player? Like the night before, get to sleep pretty easily, butterflies in the morning? Did that change throughout your career?
I was a pretty routine guy. I tried to stick to routines to help me not have the nerves. I choose not to focus. Like I go day before the game, I focus on my assignment and who I'm marking and watch video and stuff like that. And then I kind of go to bed and visualize how I'm going to guard those people and what's going to happen in the game. The next day, I don't even think about the game. I just go through my process of, go to shoot around and get my, mandatory shots that I have to do. And then come game time, I was pretty relaxed. Like I felt like I'd done my work the night before. And I was always, to play at the highest level, you have to have a level of confidence. I was confident that if I was going to be put in the game, I was going to be better than the guy I was guarding. So I always went in with that mentality. Not necessarily a better player, I just believed I could shut them down. So for me, because I was called on a lot for defense and didn't have to worry too much about scoring, so when I scored it was a bonus. So I didn't have the same pressure as, like Phil Jones or Kirk Penny. Those guys were controlling the scoring. I just had to make sure their version on the other team didn't score. So for me, I felt like I could do that, and I could do that at the highest level. So I backed myself every game to go in. So to answer your question, I wasn't a super nervous guy. I was kind of like do my processes in my head, and then what will be will be.
Dillon Boucher with us, former Breaker, former Tall Black, current head of basketball operations at the Breakers on our Tuesday feature here. Just while we're on that topic around, you weren't the flashy guy. You were a defensive workhorse. You were a wall almost, not many people getting through you. But basketball kids growing up, they want to be the one who's scoring the points, the one in the limelight. But you were quite the opposite. You did all the hard work that a lot of the time never really got the awards or the MVPs or anything like that. What made you want to be a defensive player?
Well, I don't know if I wanted to be a defensive player, to be honest. To be fair, and it's funny, I have a lot of parents come up to me now and go, "Oh, my son's just like you. He doesn't score, but he plays defense." And it's great. How old is he? And he's 11 or 12 And, I don't have the heart, and you're not going to destroy a parent, but when I was that age, I was a scoring machine, it's like I could really score when I was younger. And it's funny when I run into older guys that I used to play against, they go, "Man, you used to score, and now what's happened?" And when you play lower levels, obviously the ability to score is a lot easier. So as the higher you go, you start, every position matters. So again, I think partly what held me back was, my basketball IQ was so high that I wanted to make the highest percentage decision at every moment of every game. And so I wanted to get the ball to the right person that had the best percentage, that could have the best chance of making the shot. I truly believe that played in my mind all the time. So especially in big moments in games, there's no way I was going to shoot a three at a big moment in a game. But I would try and make the right decision to make sure that right person had the ball. And I believe that did hold me back, but I got praised for making the right decisions. And so again, you talk about Tab Baldwin. He was very good at praising me for making the right pass. He could see that others were better scorers, others were better shooters around me. So he was smart enough that every time I made the right pass, he would yell out, "Great pass," and it's like, as a player, you're like, "Oh,
pumps you up.
Sweet. Yep. All right, I'm going to do that again." And I realized the more defense I played and the more the right decisions I was making, I stayed on the floor. If I took a bad shot, I'd look over and there'd be a sub coming in. So I was like, "Oh, not going to do that again." So, smart coach, very manipulative in that respect for a player, that you just understood what your role was. And I just wanted to do the role to my best of my ability. And I realized that playing defense kept you on the court. If you can stop your defender, then you're going to be valuable to a team. So I really bought into that and really honed into that side of it and enjoyed it. I loved, as much as Kirk Penny enjoys hitting a three, I love being able to stop a guy or get a steal off a guy or go through a passing lane or whatever it may be. That is what made me feel great on a basketball court.
Let's get to 2002, and I guess the tournament that put New Zealand basketball on the map. And actually, before we get to the tournament, you guys had to qualify by beating Australia. And I vividly remember the celebrations after that. That was a monumental moment in our sporting history to know that you guys were off to the World Cup. Before that game, what belief did you have that you could beat the Aussies? Because they were a darn good basketball side. And what got you across the line against them?
Yeah, we'd never beaten them in a series leading into that. So I think we'd won once, maybe against Australia, and that was back in 1978 or something like that. So it was a long time between drinks, and they were a very good team, as you said. We had a group that had been together for a while, so even though the coach had changed a year earlier, Tab Baldwin only took over in 2001, there was kind of like the core group of guys were still there, your Phil Jones, your Kirk Pennies, your Paul Hanara, your Pero Camerons. They were all kind of still on the team, and so then we just added in a few pieces. Myself, that was my first year making the team, was 2001. And then, there have been a few others where a lot of guys had retired in the national team from after 2000 Olympics. So it still had a good core group, but then a lot of new. But we went to the Goodwill Games, and funnily enough, I wasn't even supposed to be on that team. My first son was born when the trial was on, and Tab just said, "I can't pick you if you're not at the trial," and I chose to stay for the birth of my son. And then Sean Marks ended up having some NBA commitments, and so I'd committed to already going on the tour as the video analyst, so I was going to be doing the videoing for the boys, and imagine how that went down after just having a son born. But nevertheless, I was there and I was able to train with the team, and so I got pulled into the group at the Goodwill Games in 2001 before that Australian series, and we did really well at the Goodwill Games, which gave us good confidence. So going into that Aussie series, we actually truly believed we were a good team and we could beat Australia. And like I say, we had a good game one, and I think we punched them in the nose and surprised them early and got that game one, and that was the second time we'd ever beaten Australia. And then we probably should have won game two, but they came back to beat us in game two in Hamilton, and then we closed out game three at North Shore Event Centre. was historical moment and so much fun. That series to actually, beat Australia was a massive deal, but to book your ticket to the World Cup as well was actually a pretty special moment.
So what was it like, Sean Marks coming back into the camp? Because I can imagine there'll be a few jokes behind Sean's back. Here comes the big dog. Is he going to pick up the room bills for the boys and that type of thing? What was that kind of relationship like when he's coming from the big show into the New Zealand environment?
Yeah, it's interesting. He definitely picked up the room bills, by the way, and the bar tabs. He was very good at that. Still is to this day. But no, he was one of the boys. So we used to give him a lot of stick, and but it was friendly banter. Most of us had known Sean since we were teenagers, playing against each other. We'd played together in under 16s, and he'd played on the junior teams with a lot of the guys as well. So him coming back in was just like one of the bros coming back. He was just had a few more zeros after his name than what we did, but Sean's such an easygoing guy that he just slots straight back in, and he never flexed his NBA status around unless we needed him to. But he wasn't like walking around, saying stuff. It was more like, Pero was stealing his NBA socks and stuff like that. It was more like we just wanted his gears, like leave us some gears. Like we were just, in those days you couldn't buy anything NBA like that level. So yeah, we were all after his gear to show that we knew someone in the NBA.
When did you realise that team could do something pretty special at that World Cup? And what was it? Because, compared to Spain, the US, all those other teams who you came up against, Yugoslavia, whatever it might have been, you guys were largely, not amateurs, but you know what I mean.
We were.
Compared to them, you were.
Yeah.
So how did it happen?
Yeah, I think, again, we're talking pre-internet days, so there was no one could scout us, so no one really knew, first of all, no one would have a clue who I was because I'd never played for the national team, but no one knew, people knew probably Sean Marks, and they probably knew Pero from the 2000 Olympics, and, our main guys they probably knew, but our bench they didn't. But also, we were playing a style of basketball that no one had seen before. We used to run this offense called the open offense, and it was almost like an inverted offense that we set flare screens for our big guys to shoot threes, and normally the big guys are inside, and we had Pero Cameron and Sean Marks and Ed Book, who were very good three-point shooters that were able to knock those shots down and stretch them, and if anything it pulled the bigs away from the hoop, which opened the lanes up for your Sparkies and your Paulies to drive, and Phil and Kirk were equally as good coming off shooting on the wings. So we just had a group that really bought into playing a role. We talked about role playing earlier, like being able to just go do what you do well and do it at the best of your ability at a World Cup. That's all you need to do. We don't need to do anything more. And so everyone understood their role on the team, right down to the 12th man. And sometimes, they didn't get on the court, but they understood how valuable they were to the team. So we had a great build-up. After we'd beaten Australia, we'd gone and we'd been travelling around Europe for about a month before the World Cup, and we'd beaten Yugoslavia in a warm-up game. We'd come close with a couple other teams. We had some success, and we were kind of like, we're right there. We're actually pretty good. Like, if we just turn up and just make things really tough for opposition and execute well, we'll put ourselves in the best chance to win. But, of course, no one really knew us. So when we went into the first game against Russia, I guarantee you Russia didn't even scout us. They probably were just like, it's a team from New Zealand, whatever. We'll win. And we knew if we could get game one under our belt, it gave us a real head start in our pool play. So we threw everything into game one. And I remember Tab talking about game one, and we'd never ever talked about game two. So we won game one, and then we were like, we've got to focus on the next opposition now. But he had us so focused. We knew every offense they were running. We knew every player. We knew every detail. It was so detailed that to the point where we would spend hours and hours just watching video of this other team. And we did that on every team. So that's what I mean when we're ahead of our time. Tab was very much about scouting video, understanding the opposition, and then where are their weaknesses, and we're going to attack their weaknesses. And we had clear game plans every game of how we were going to attack the opposition.
What was the journey like inside the team? The country got behind you, as I say, it kind of put basketball on the map. What was it like in that team to go on such a run at a World Cup and become a story around the world?
It was fun, man. I think we had no idea the impact it was making back home until we started and this is, you guys will even laugh at this, we were getting fax messages sent to the hotel from people, and our manager would get on the bus in the morning on the way to training or to games, and he'd start reading out these fax messages, and every day there'd be more and more. And when we started winning, it was like he was coming on the bus with like stacks. Like I think the hotel was starting to charge us for paper and printing because we just had all these faxes coming in, and it was hilarious ones too. There'd be like, some would be just good luck boys or whatever. Then some would be like, from a girl, and so you're my favourite player. We'd have a bit of banter on the bus, and it was. The group really enjoyed each other's company, and I think when you enjoy each other's company on a team, you play hard for each other, and you want each other to succeed. And I truly believe that team had guys that wanted to see each other succeed. So it didn't matter who had the ball in their hands; everyone wanted them to succeed. So you had no problem making the extra pass to a wide open shooter on the other side, or setting a great screen so that person can come off wide open. That was what understanding those roles. So that was a fun ride. And it wasn't all, roses. Like we had some long video sessions that were pretty grueling, and when we'd win a game, but we'd made a heap of mistakes, Tab made sure we knew where those mistakes were, so we got better next game. And it was a fun ride, but it was also, pretty intense journey throughout that time.
So in those tournaments, and it's almost like a basketball season as well. If you think of rugby, they play one game a week, so their weeks are really structured. Mm-hmm. So for basketball, you got the travel thing, and you might be playing the next day or in 2 days' time. So your trainings, what are they like? 'Cause I'm sure there's competition for spots. So if you're not in that kind of starting lineup, you're trying to, as you touched on before, impress because you want to be out there. Then you kind of the coach needs to keep freshness in the legs to keep the boys, in 100% ready to go for the next game. So what was it like at that time when you're sort of on this ride and everyone wants to be a part of it, and yet you've got to try and stay as fresh as possible?
Well, I can tell you there was no sports science in those days. There was no resting the bodies. There was, if anything, we were thrashing the bodies to the point of, we would have nothing left. They were ahead of their time. The coaches were ahead of their time. Execution plays, scouting, those sorts of things. I believe, as a group, we were as fit as any team there as well. So, and we were deep. So we had players on the bench that, could come in and not have a lull after the starting five. And I believe that played to our advantage. Early in the tournament, Sean Marks got poked in the eye and had a tournament-ending injury. So, funnily enough, I was with Sean a couple of weekends ago, and I was telling the story to someone else, and I was saying if Sean didn't have his eye poked out of that tournament, we may have won the World Cup. Mm. And you can say that because no one can challenge it, right? And Sean kind of played it down. Oh, yeah, I don't know if we go that far. And I was like, no, you can say that because you're humble. But the reality is, our only NBA player gets injured halfway through the tournament. We still go on to come fourth in the world, and he was, one of our best players. So had we had him, it would have changed everything. But Ed Book, it just meant he played more minutes, and he really stepped up for us. I remember Ed, he wasn't playing a huge amount of minutes in the first few games, and then he was starting and then playing a major role. So just everyone was ready at any time to get given those minutes, and so every team would be different too. There'd be games where I would play more because it would be a match-up on someone, and then other times it would be someone else's turn to step up. So that's what I mean. The coaches were very detailed on whose number was called at what time, and I never sat there going, "Oh, why is he playing ahead of me?" It was just like, "Yeah, man, we're going to win this game," and we all buy into it. So that's when wanting each other to succeed, and it sounds like every team should be like that, but the reality is it's not. It doesn't work like that. So when you can have a team that's buying into what the coach is saying, no matter whether it's their number or not, it's when you've got things right.
Was Dillon Boucher with us, by the way, obviously former Tall Black, former Breaker, now in charge of basketball operations at the Breakers. Was that 2002 effort in the World Cup the catalyst for the Breakers becoming a thing? Because it was the year later when the Breakers did become a thing. You make your debut in the Australian National Basketball League at an age of 27, which for most sports would be quite old. You still have 10 years after that, by the way, playing at a top level. But was it a catalyst for the Breakers' inception into the ANBL?
100%. Yeah, so it was definitely off the back of 2002, and that was and probably the reason why the Australians let us have a team in, because they realised we could forge a competitive team.
So you guys opened the door for professional basketball in this country, really?
Wow. Essentially, yeah. And for me, I was quite happy to give up my full-time job and become a full-time basketball player. So I was right behind it. But that was a special moment for me. Again, never did I dream of being a professional basketball player till I started playing in those international tournaments where you're playing against pros. And after those tournaments, you start getting offers from other countries and things, and you start looking over the fence of what it would be like. And I was just starting to get that interest out there. And then the Breakers came along, and I was like, what better place to apply your trade than on your backyard? So yeah, it was a dream come true for me.
Yeah, so sorry, back at that tournament, you guys are having a great run. Are the boys thinking, shit, there are scouts in these stands, from all over the world? You just touched on it. So were the boys, had the blinkers on, weren't even down that space because they're so committed to the cause of playing for the Tall Blacks? Or was there a little bit of chat, back at the hotel, I think I saw the scouts here and this is a great opportunity for us to, launch ourselves?
Well, I certainly wasn't thinking that. No doubt, like your Piros and your Phils and, your Mark Dickells, they were probably thinking that there's an opportunity for them. I probably went in naively to that tournament, not even thinking there would be a scout in the building. It wasn't until after I was talking to a New Zealand fan, and it was at the end of the tournament, and they said something like, oh, yeah, I was sitting next to an NBA scout at one of the games. And I jokingly said, oh, were you pumping my tyres? And he said, I didn't need to. This guy actually had you on his list. And I was like, what? An NBA scout had me on their list? And he goes, yeah, there was a couple of guys on the list and you were one of them. And he was asking me about you. And it's funny because, you fast forward now to the role I'm in now, and I'm constantly asking people about other people because you want to know about them off the court. Anyone can see what you can do on the court. So to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about scouts. I definitely was not thinking about NBA, and I think he probably just had watched a section of me in a small part of a game and maybe liked what he saw, but then probably watched more and realised that I wasn't the guy he was looking for. But to have your name, thrown around with other, NBA players at a tournament is cool. But there's a long way between that and then actually signing in the NBA, and I certainly don't for 1 minute think that at the end of that tournament I was going to the NBA. But I was just happy to be playing for the Breakers and having an opportunity to play in front of your home fans.
The start of the Breakers was tough in terms of on-court results. What was the mood around the place like at the start? Was it still excitement about getting it, or was it a bit of a, wow, this is perhaps harder than we thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I think when you come off a successful World Cup campaign, you're thinking, your confidence is high. We looked at our team, our first team we put together for the Breakers. It was a good team, and on paper we were very good. I think we underestimated how tough the Aussie League is. We won our first game and we beat Adelaide, who had been the champs, I think, the year earlier, and we kind of thought, well, we're actually all right. We're going to go, got a chance of winning this league, and then we lost 10 games in a row, and that was pretty humbling. And then, even the day-to-day grind of professionalism, because half of us weren't professionals before, so we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know that you had to come in and, work all day at being good at basketball. And that sounds easy. Oh, it's fun. You do what you love, but it's like there's so many unfun parts of it. You don't have to preach to the converted here, but there's so many unsexy things about being a professional basketball player that you don't even think of. And so that was hard. And then when you're losing on top of that, and then the coach is trying to find solutions, so they're changing rotations, and all of a sudden it's like. And now you're getting paid, every year you're getting paid on the performance of the year before. So now your minutes actually matter. At a World Cup, no one's earning money. So it's like, well, I'm happy for Kyle to go on and play in front of me, or, I'm happy for Piero to score that basket. Now it's professionally, I'm getting paid accordingly. It's like, no, I want to get paid more. So I want the ball and I want to be able to do this. And so that's where that, I talk about being happy for each other's success. That's hard in a professional environment because everyone's getting paid accordingly. And if you don't have a good season, your contract's going to go down, or you're not going to have a contract. And I think that's when you start getting in those environments, when you're on a losing streak, then everyone's doing their best to make the team better, but they're also in the back of the mind, they're doing their best to get a contract for next year. So it's a balancing act.
How did it become a dynasty? How did the Breakers become a franchise that won 4 titles in the space of just a few years? It went from a franchise that got people following them but struggling on the court to beating everyone in their way.
Yeah, I think, part of it was recruitment. So, Andre Lamanis came in, didn't have success straight away. In fact, the opposite was near the bottom of the table. But kind of had a real plan of what he wanted to do and how he wanted to build it. And it takes time. You can't. Because some guys are on 3-year contracts, some are on 2. Sometimes they need to become better to attract some of the better players. So what they started doing is recruiting, again, people that would be team first people, but also talented team first people, because, easy to be the 12th guy and be team first because you never get on the court, but hard to be the superstar and be team first. But how do you bring a superstar in that's team first? And so, being able to attract those top level talent from overseas, your Cedric Jacksons of the world that, are very good players, but also great teammates. Recruiting guys like Kirk Penny back to the Breakers, who's a legend of New Zealand, but also wants to be successful for the team and for the country. So having guys buying into that to start with, and then CJ Bruton recruited to the Breakers was a huge coup. For top Australian talent comes over here. Before him, it was Tony Ronaldson who kind of set the tone from a leadership and what we need to do, how to work hard. It's a shame guys like him and Oscar Foreman and guys like that never got to win a championship with the Breakers, but were an integral part of where we were going. And then, recruiting guys like Mika Vakona back to the franchise, guys who had won, both CJ, Mika and myself, we'd had success for Australian teams and how to win. So bringing guys back that knew how to win and understood what it takes to win, and understand how to do the little things to make this team win. Just that pure combination. And then, obviously the Blackwell ownership was bringing in a real values-based, family-based environment, which for me, that was a huge recruitment part for me to come back to the Breakers, knowing that my family was going to be included in what we were doing, because it's such a... You spend so many hours on a basketball court, and your family doesn't. It's like if they're not included in your journey, then it's quite an isolated situation. So them integrating family and family first into everything was a massive part of the success. Again, you look at that group and those teams, they're all still good mates to this day. So just a good group of human beings that all got the same goal, but all again want to do what's best for what the team needs at the time. And yeah, I'm sure if you go back and you broke it down, of course every player wants more minutes, but the reality is they understood why they weren't getting the minutes, and they understood the person in front of them was getting them because of that reason. And that's all you need to know as a player.
You kind of touched on it already, but I was playing back then, and all I would hear about is this bloody team culture over at the Breakers, and you're around at the Blackwells on Sunday night for roast type thing. So that's obviously a big part of it. In the background, you've already highlighted there's minutes. People are trying to get contracts for the next year. So to try and build a really strong team culture like that doesn't happen overnight.
It's hard, and you have to make some sacrifices. Some good players probably left the Breakers because they didn't quite fit what they needed in that respect. And and even now when I'm doing my own recruiting for Americans, it's always personality first. What are they like? They've obviously got to be talented to be on my radar, but are they a good person? Are they going to buy into it? Are they going to be, sometimes in a crucial moment of the game, they might have to sit on the bench because there's a better option, and are they going to sit there and pout, or are they going to actually be up cheering for that person and wanting that person's success? And it's easier said than done in the heat of the moment, and especially, when you get subbed off in a crucial moment of a game and you think you should be out there, that you wouldn't be a competitor if you didn't think that way. It's whether you act on that or not, and whether you show that. And the Blackwells just did a great job of living by values rather than, and the culture came from that. So they led from the front. They would again open their house whenever you wanted. I remember them going away on holiday and they said, "Here's the pin code to our house if you ever want to take the kids for a swim." And I was like, what? It's like this, this really beautiful house in the lake in Takapuna, and they're just giving me the door code. That's trust, right? Not many people would do that. So that kind of stuff is, that makes you as a when you're working for someone that that loves you, that makes you show the love back and be able to, and you don't want to let those people down. It's like your mum and dad. You don't want to let your mum and dad down. That's how it felt with them. It felt like we wanted to do it for them because they were trusting us with their keys to their Ferrari, which was the Breakers.
You mentioned a name before, Mika Vakona, who whenever you saw him on court, whenever you saw him off court, he had this aura, he had this mana about him that his teammates just seemed to want to be around him and wanted to follow him into anything. He was definitely appreciated in New Zealand. But do you think he was a bit underappreciated in terms of bigger leagues, bigger opportunities? He was a he was an unreal basketballer.
He's a kind of a total legend on this side of the world. I think it was appreciated in Australia too. When you hear people talk about him now, further afield, he doesn't fit the typical import mold. Like he wasn't a scorer. He did all the little things. He scrapped. He was like pound for pound one of the strongest dudes I've ever been around. Strong hands. He was kind of like, I would have loved to have seen him play rugby, to be honest. Like, I actually think he would probably be an All Black. Like he's a phenomenal athlete and super strong, super powerful. But he doesn't fit in the box. Like when you try and describe him to people, you go, I don't know. Like when you say someone scraps for the ball, you go, yeah, but how much is that value really worth until he's on your team and then he comes up with a play that no one else can come up with, and then you understand the value. But when you're trying to sell that to someone else, I don't think they go, I'm not going to pay extra for that. So I don't believe he was appreciated for what he could do. He certainly got noticed in World Cups and things like that because he did those things that were amazing, but probably, he got a few opportunities overseas, but probably didn't go to that next level just purely because he didn't fit in that box.
So you touched on the culture at the Breakers, team first mentality, and you've had a couple of stints at the Wildcats and the Bullets. So what was it like going into those environments? Because I would have thought you have been considered as a senior player then. Are you trying to install those same beliefs and values from the Breakers into those environments, or are they steadfast in what they were trying to implement there? And what were those environments like? How were they different? Yeah,
so I guess I left the Breakers after 2 years, 2 shaky years too. We weren't great for those 2 years, and I was part of the clean out. I didn't get my contract renewed, otherwise I would have stayed. But having the opportunity to go to Perth, and Perth were quite a successful franchise, and I got a true taste of just a day in, day out living professional basketball player, totally different to what we'd just been experiencing in New Zealand. Again, the Aussie environment is tough, and their fans are uncompromising. In Perth, they expected you to win every game, and when you didn't, it was like social media was flying, and if you didn't play well, you were called out by them, and so you had to be good. But being around, guys in a professional environment, I got a real taste of. I think that's when I started becoming more of a pro and understanding that just everything is a process, just going into your processes and, every day just doing the same thing, as boring as it may sound, just being really monotonous in what you do, and being able to just get through trainings just almost an autopilot, if that makes sense. And so that in those environments, and then getting the opportunity to go to Brisbane where I did the same thing but with a more talented group than I had in Perth, and had success in Brisbane and winning the championship there, but being around pros at the highest level that were really talented pros, but they were still doing the basic things. And I was like, it's not just the guys who need to get better doing the basic things, it's actually the top guys need to do the basic things well as well. And just again, learning from each coach and different things and work ethics and, weight room, recovery, all that sort of thing. I think these teams were doing it better than they were at the Breakers. And Paulie Hanare is one of my best friends, and he was still at the Breakers when all this was happening, and I was like going, Perth we do this, and Brisbane we do this, and they were still bottom of the table at that stage, and he's like, well, we're still at the bottom of the table, and we've made all these changes, and he was telling me about all these changes with the Blackwells taking over, and he was saying, no, things are honestly better here. You should come back, and I was like, yeah, one day, and then sure enough, my second year in Brisbane, the Breakers wanted to sign CJ Bruton. There's a true story. CJ Bruton, they'd rung him and said they want to recruit him. He'd said, the only way I'll come back is if you sign Dillon Boucher as well. He said, I've just played with Dillon and I want to play with him, so if you want me, you got to sign him. And then he rang me straight after and said, hey, I just told them that they've got to sign you. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen, because Andre Lemanis was the coach who'd let me go. I thought there's no way he's going to then recruit me back. And sure enough, I got a phone with CJ and I said to my wife, CJ reckons he said this, and there's no way he said that. And then sure enough, the phone rang and it was Richard Clark, Breakers GM, saying, we want you back. And I was like, wow, they clearly want CJ. So long story short, I ended up signing back with the Breakers and CJ signed, and the rest is history. So.
What's that like when a coach has let you go and then he brings you back, albeit with someone else?
Yeah.
But what was it initially like when you got back into the fold with
Well, that was kind of the conversations early on was, are you just signing me or do I have a role? And he was like, no, you absolutely have a role. Okay. And then we won our first championship. I remember he came up to me, and I don't remember the exact words, but it was something to the words of, I made a mistake years ago. Like, now we've won a championship. Like, I'm glad you're back kind of thing. So something around those lines. And as a player, that's all you want to hear, right? You go, every coach has to come in and make decisions that are hard decisions. And when the team's bottom of the table, and you start looking at stats, I guarantee mine didn't jump off the page at him, so I wasn't mad at him. And then when I play the Breakers when I was away, I tried extra hard, so I didn't even play well then because I was trying too hard to impress, and I'd end up playing like shit anyway. And so I was like, I actually just, coming home for me was like, now I'm back where I belong, and now I really want to bring a championship to this club. And so I had a real motivation when I came back to not only be better at basketball, but also to really help the club. And like I say, I was starting to, be on in my years. I was in my 30s and wanted to make sure before I left this club that we'd seen success. And so, being able to cut those nets down in those championship years was pretty special.
I would have thought playing for Perth and the Breakers, are they the two hardest clubs to play for travel-wise?
100%, yeah. Breakers is the hardest because it's international, so you've got to be at the airport 2 hours early.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas Perth, everything's domestic, but it's still a long way to go. They by far are the two hardest, yeah. And then playing for Brisbane, I was like, oh, this is easy. An hour up the road. And to be honest, we had a really wealthy owner, and he had a private jet. So most of the times we would fly home after the game. So it was even like I'd be home by midnight, in my own bed. It was nice.
Hey, just a few more. And if I can kind of jump forward before we slightly jump back again. You're just talking about the culture of I suppose, what made that Breakers team, what helped that Breakers team get to the point that it got to. With the Breakers team at the moment and the role that you're in, and with other people around you that were kind of around that franchise at the same time, Paul and Liz for starters, are you trying to take it back to what it was then, or how much can you take from what was so successful then 10 years down the track and instill it into the current setup?
Yeah, a lot has changed in the league from back in those successful years, but when you're recruiting players and recruiting a team, that stuff hasn't changed. Like, you still want good people, and you still need talent. Like, we had good people, but we had talent as well. You still need talent to win championships. If you just get a bunch of good dudes, that doesn't mean you're going to win. Yeah. You need talent within that group. So that hasn't changed. It's just probably higher levels of it. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to build something that people are greater cause than just playing basketball. Like, what else do we stand for, and what are we as a club? So when I'm looking at recruiting a player from Australia or a player from the States, what is it that they look at and go, I want to be there? And so we want to build that again. We want to build that the Breakers brand is a place where people want to be, because people have talked about it, and that might have been in a conversation 2 years ago that I overheard someone saying about their great experience in the Breakers. That makes people want to come back. Like, even if we don't bring back our American imports from this year for next year, hopefully when they're over talking to people overseas, they're talking about a great experience that they had in New Zealand, what a beautiful country it is. So I might be recruiting someone that happens to be friends with them, or their wives are friends or something, that they go, nah, we had a great time in New Zealand. So we want to create that again, that no matter win, lose in the season, you leave with, a new set of friends that want to be part of a team and on the other side of the world, essentially. And if we can create that environment, we know that'll put us in the best chance to recruit good talent.
Is it better to recruit, say, a player who from the States who's still trying to make it, still trying to find that right platform to show his skill sets to get into the NBA, or is it better to grab a guy who's been a journeyman, been there, done that, almost on the way down, or what you've just touched on, it's just team culture?
Yeah. It's a hard one. If I had that answer, we would have won the championship every year. But, I think sometimes young is good. You might not have great leadership in your other guys, so you might actually need a more veteran type leader that comes from your imports. So depending on what the team needs at the time and then you get some guys who have come off an injury, like our fourth championship, Akina Bekwe, our import, who hit the game-winning shot. He'd just come off foot surgery, and he'd been playing in Europe before us, and we got him at a discounted rate because he'd come off injury. And he hits a game-winning shot to win us our fourth championship. And was a great import and has gone on to play in Europe ever since. So sometimes you just take those opportunities, even those ones where it's like someone may have made a mistake in their life, they may have made a bad decision. doesn't mean they're a bad person. They just got caught up and sometimes you might give them the opportunity, and sometimes it might backfire on you because you think you can control someone that maybe you can't, and those sorts of things. We had a guy when Kevin Braswell was coaching Sean Long, who was a really good import for us, and everyone had said, don't touch him, he's this wild character. And the first time we met him, we were like, this guy's a lovely guy, what are you talking about? But he just had these moments where he'd just snap, and so Kevin Braswell did a really good job managing him, and he's again gone on to, he went to, I think, Melbourne United after us, and then ended up going and playing in Japan and China, and he's had a really good career. But he's a great dude, great dude. And he just had these moments where he just snapped, and he couldn't control his emotions. So we tried to help him through those parts, and didn't mean he was a bad guy. He just didn't handle things well all the time. So sometimes those guys, again, you get opportunities with really talented players that have been misunderstood or just not put in an environment that helps them thrive as well.
So I guess when a player does come on the market, all the Australian clubs are is it competitive, that space, to try and lure that person to your club?
100%. So you almost guaranteed if you're talking to a player, they'll be talking to several teams at the same time. Okay. Because if they need, like, let's say it's a point guard, and we're lucky we've got Parker Jackson Cartwright, but say we didn't and we needed a point guard, and so did South East Melbourne and so did Cairns, you guarantee that agent is talking to all three teams at the same time and going, oh, well, Cairns are willing to offer us this. And so 100%, if the agent's doing their job, they're definitely talking to other teams.
Millsy's getting in that world at the moment with cricket, getting agents all over the place. Yeah. Can I ask you, what were I know you're in a difficult position because you're back in the Breakers and you're chief of the basketball operations, but for a man who had been around this franchise for so long, seen it go through, start off that amazing moment, then struggle on the court, and then get right back up to arguably the highest point that basketball's seen in this country when the Breakers won 4 titles in the space of a few years, and then Paul and Liz sell the team and things kind of fall apart from the outside looking in. As a man who had devoted so much of his time to the club and had been a big part of bringing it from the very start to get to where it was, what was it like being on the outside watching it all kind of, I don't know if unravel's the right word, but I'm going to use that word, unravel.
Yeah, I think, again, we are a New Zealand team playing in an Australian competition. Like, it's always going to be hard. Sometimes when guys talk about how hard the travel is, I just go, yeah, it's hard. But we can't change it. We're from New Zealand. If you choose to play here, it's going to be harder than anywhere else. So for me, like, seeing the club not do well was it hurt. It hurt watching. It hurts me now watching our club. It's because I want this club to be the most successful club in NBL history. And when you're a part of it, it's easy to control. When you're not a part of it, you can't control it. Those years that I spent away from the Breakers were hard because they struggled at times and they made decisions at times that I wouldn't have done those things. And when you're not part of it, you can't control it, so you can't have any say, and but you still want the team to do well. And so that was really hard watching from afar. And what was hard was watching players that didn't want to be at the club. Players that we'd recruited into the club who actively said, I don't want to be a part of that club anymore. And that hurt me because my jersey was hanging from the rafters, and I want that brand to be a club that everyone wants to play for. They should want to have the success that we had, and when players, especially local talent, that didn't want to be there, I was like, wow, that's not good. And so that's not, no matter who owns the team, we want this to be a place where people want to come. We always want, because New Zealand sells itself. It's like you get to live in Auckland and, you get to live in New Zealand for a season. That's actually pretty attractive. But when guys were turning their back on it, it was like, that's not good. So again, you're never going to get every player you want, and especially with a competitive market out there, but you hope you've got an advantage over the New Zealand players, that you want them to want to play in their backyard. That's got to be the ultimate, playing in front of their family and friends in their country that they're from. But that wasn't happening, and so that's why there's been a big drive to try and bring that Kiwi talent back. And I'll make it really clear, if there's a better Australian player in a position, I'm not going to overlook them. I'm going to recruit an Australian, but we need to make sure that, our core group that we're trying to recruit are Kiwis, and it's not always going to work out that way, but that's certainly, we think we have a part to play in the development in this country of basketball.
Well, just on that, I think you're going to be a great person to answer this question. So if I look at rugby league, there was the Bartercard Cup, a really strong domestic competition. The Warriors came about, then that domestic competition kind of fizzled out. You played for the Auckland Stars when she was a tough old competition. Then the Breakers have come about, and we've got that Australian presence over there. In your playing days, you went back and played for the Heat, the Auckland Pirates / Auckland Stars, the Saints. Was there a drop in standard in that competition from when you started pre your Breakers days?
No, I don't think so. I think if anything, it's got better. I think it's just, it's like anything. It's like we have people come to us and go, oh, the NBA is way better. And then you get, a Torrey Craig comes back to the league from the NBA and JaVale McGee. And they're good players in the league, but they're not like miles better. They're, don't get me wrong, I'd love them on my team, but, they're not like, the gap is not as big as everyone thinks. The NBA play different rules, so it looks more entertaining in the NBA than what it looks here. Then there's the gap between the Australian NBL and the New Zealand NBL, and again, half our team goes back and plays in the New Zealand NBL still, so you still got your top Kiwi talent there and some top Australian talent coming over, so the gap is not that much. It's just probably you don't have the depth of talent, and then the level of import that come down to play in the Australian League are higher than the level of import that are playing in the New Zealand League. So you don't have that extra level of talent. Occasionally some will go from, like a Torrey Craig, will go from the New Zealand NBL to the Australian NBL. Very rarely does that happen, and you have to be exceptional like player for someone to take that chance that you can do it at a higher level. And the way I would describe it, the Australian NBL is probably a little bit more physical and a little bit more faster and a little bit more athletic, and those are the three things that probably are above the New Zealand NBL. But the product in the New Zealand NBL was pretty high, and I think when people go, oh, it's rubbish, it's like, what are you comparing it to? And I actually think like it's a pretty high standard, and especially when you see our top Kiwi guys that play for Breakers or other teams coming back and they're putting up good numbers in the league, that's a good thing for the league as well.
So in your career, what has given you the most enjoyment and satisfaction? Wearing the singlet or wearing the suit?
Wearing the suit's frustrating because you can't control it. Wearing the singlet, at least you can control it. So when I played bad and the team lost, I know I had a part in it. When the team plays bad when you're in a suit, it's like there's nothing you can do. Although you had a hand in recruiting those players, but I think being able to, for me, it's the people. It's been the friendships I've built throughout those years as player and off court that that when you bump into these guys organically, that you've still got friends out there. And I think that for me, all the championships and stuff aside, that stuff is the stuff that, will be with you forever. And I think those are the reason you play sport. You play sport because you enjoy it and love it, and the friendships you make within it.
Just lastly, and I asked this because you just kind of brought it up around Tom and his retirement with the jersey and retiring the jersey and all that sort of stuff. You've got your jersey retired in terms of the Breakers. What is that moment like, and how does that compare to winning a title? Winning a title, I assume, is just complete and utter joy, whereas seeing a club, people inside that club honour you by retiring your number must be such a unique, amazing experience.
It's the ultimate, honestly. Like, winning championships are fun and exciting, and they're why you play the game. You don't play the game to get your jersey retired. You play the game to win championships, and to be honoured and be recognised by the club is like the ultimate honour that they've recognised that work that you've put in for them. And again, remembering I went away for 3 years, so I wasn't here through the whole period, whereas Paul Hanara and Tom Abercrombie were only Breakers. That was they were one club people. CJ Bruton and myself slightly different. So, for Tommy, he just about holds every record in the club. He's been a legend of the club. I was fortunate enough to play with him, fortunate enough to be in the front office working with him. So I think for me, like someone like Tom is 100% deserving of this accolade. And it's funny when we've been trying to. He's such a humble guy. When we've been trying to do stuff around it, he's kind of been like, oh no, I don't want everyone to think. And I'm like, no one thinks that. So you don't need to even be humble in this moment. This is the moment where you just embrace what the club is trying to do, and just celebrate your career. And like I say, he's special to this club and still is part of the ownership group now in this club. So he's not going anywhere. So him and I, probably see as much of each other now than when he was, off court and on court kind of relationship. So I hope people do come out and support him because he deserves it. Like, he deserves a full house at Spark Arena. If people could sell out to watch the Breakers win a championship and have Tom Abercrombie playing, I think they owe it to him to come out and support the career that he's had, because he's had one of the best careers of anyone in a Breakers jersey. So I hope people do listen to this and think, I'm going to go buy a ticket now and go watch this guy, because he's a legend of the club. And, will there be another Tom Abercrombie? Who knows? But he's certainly set the bar very high.
Well said, as have you, and it's we've taken up way more of your time than we said we would, but really appreciate you coming in, mate. You have been amazing through your basketball career, and great to be able to sit down with you for about an hour or so and chew the fat. Good stuff. Thanks so much, Dillon.
No, my pleasure. Sorry I talk so much.
No, it's good.